Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama, wherever you're watching us on this Thanksgiving weekend. This is the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. You guys are watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, listening to us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. Of course, I am Joe Gaither. You can follow me at Joe Gaither6 for all your social media needs. Send us your comments, questions, queries, and complaints. And we hope you guys are having a great holiday weekend. Hope you enjoyed a lot of great food and football with the family yesterday. And we're here to get you geared up for Iron Bowl. It's Football Friday. I am at my parents' school where they work, so I am not in my house today, hence the different location, maybe the different sound as well. But we got the crew together. We're going to have a lot of fun today talking Alabama and Auburn, talking Egg Bowl as well, talking all kinds of rivalry weekend, Michigan and Ohio State. We'll figure out what it's going to do, what it's going to be this weekend. So, of course, follow us on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com for all of our coverage. We'll have a full team down in Jordan-Hare Stadium tomorrow at 2:30, right there on CBS. But you'll be able to follow it all right there on BamaCentral.com, led by Katie Wyndham and Austin Hannon. You can follow Katie Wyndham at Katie Wyndham _ and Austin Hannon. Ooh, I like the other one better. At Austin Hannon at Austin Hannon _ as well. They both look like they've had a lot of turkey or ham or maybe mac and cheese. So how was your Thanksgiving, Katie?
It was good. I don't really like turkey, and my family didn't make a ham, so I didn't have a ton of protein yesterday, but I had plenty of carbs. So it was a good Thanksgiving. Had a lot of good food, some good times, and watched a little bit of football yesterday, but obviously the main course football-wise is this weekend.
Absolutely. Austin, how about yourself, man? How we doing? How was Thanksgiving?
I'm good. It was good. Good to see family. Good to get a little break, get out of Tuscaloosa for a couple days. And yeah, just excited for this weekend. Excited to see what it's all about at Jordan-Hare Stadium and see how this Alabama team plays this weekend.
It's going to be a lot of fun. 2:30 in Jordan-Hare Stadium. The last time the two of you guys were there in Bryant-Denny Stadium, Alabama entered as a pretty healthy favorite as well. Bryce Young and Will Anderson going up against a 6-5 TJ Finley and Brian Harsin led team. But it ended up as a 4 overtime game. Austin, I've been preaching all week that Auburn doesn't have anything up front for Alabama, and Auburn's, deep to intermediate passing game is pretty poor. There's no way they stay in this game. XYZ, ABC, blowout coming. Will we see another 4 overtime game, or will I be made to look a fool and have at least a close game?
I don't think so. I think obviously you never really know. And obviously I think two years ago, I probably would have said the same thing. But I don't think that this Auburn team is trending in the right direction right now for this to happen. Obviously what happened last week was pretty embarrassing for their program. And to hear Hugh Freeze earlier in the week kind of talk about how the team seemed to still be in a fog, I think is not a good sign. So, with Alabama going up and Auburn kind of going down right now, it seems kind of far-fetched to believe that we'll see something like that again. But once again, I would never be surprised in that stadium.
Katie, tell us how magical it was 2 years ago, 90 yards to go, down by the 7, and you had to go get the touchdown. Bryce Young leading Alabama to basically tie the game up.
Yeah, well, that was back when we still kind of wrote more traditional game stories, and I was assigned to the game story for that game. So, as that drive is happening and then all the overtimes, I basically am scrapping everything I've written, and having to start over. But I tell people really that Bryce to Ja'Cory touchdown to tie the game is probably the most collective response I've ever heard in a press box, because in general, there's no cheering. You'll get little smack, or when somebody makes a really hard hit, everybody's kind of like, whoa, you have stuff like that. But it was with that touchdown, it was I don't know if it was a gasp or because for everyone in there, for Alabama writers, for Auburn writers, for people in there who are, fans, you're having to change what you wrote, because, Auburn writers are thinking, oh, we're writing this huge victory for the Tigers, a big Iron Bowl victory, ruining Alabama's season. And for Alabama, it's Auburn has once again ruined Alabama's season. They're not going to go back to the playoffs. They'll still go to Georgia the next week for that SEC championship. I believe they'd already clinched, but at that point, it's kind of meaningless, which would be an unusual situation for Alabama. But if you go back and watch that drive, there's so many. You had 3rd and 10 backed up against your own end zone, pretty much. It's not just the third down conversion for the touchdown. It's the very beginning of that drive. Bryce stays calm and converts. You face 4th and 7 in the middle of that drive. He converts, and then obviously the touchdown to Ja'Cory Brooks, which is kind of wild. Here we are 2 years later. Ja'Cory Brooks was the hero of that game, along with Bryce and John Mechie. And last year he was the leading receiver, and this year he's been MIA, which it's kind of wild. But it was pretty crazy game last year for that was the first Iron Bowl I'd covered in Jordan Hare. I've been to plenty there, but the first one I covered that, and it didn't make it easy on me to write a game story for that game.
Austin Katie Wyndham brings up Ja'Cory Brooks, and everyone obviously remembers the over-the-shoulder catch to tie the ball game. But you've been the man leading all of our coverage this year on injuries. Ja'Cory Brooks not going to be available tomorrow, but you put out on BamaCentral.com the latest injury report about Deontay Lawson and Jalen Key and several others. So tell everybody what you've reported and maybe any extra nuggets that didn't make it into the story.
Yeah, Key and Lawson were kind of the guys that were a little bit more questionable than the other two. Quandarius and Kobe Prince have kind of been ready to go all week. I think they've been a little bit more precautious with the other two just because they have been coming off injuries and have missed a couple games. And there's a balance between trying to get guys ready for the physicality of an Iron Bowl while also trying to kind of not injure them in practice. And so I think that's a little bit what they've been trying to do in practice this week. Obviously, Saban sounded pretty optimistic when he answered the question on Wednesday. And then, of course, late last night, I put the story out. So, yeah, it looks like they're both going to go. I think, Lawson's probably, if there is one that might dress up but maybe not play a full game, it would be Lawson, just because I think his injury's not as – I think Key has come along farther than Lawson has this week. But knowing that he went to Mobile Christian School and, grew up around this rivalry and wanting to play in this game, I find it very challenging to believe that he wouldn't play if he suits up and goes out there in his uniform tomorrow. So I expect both of them to play. I expect Prentice and Quandarius Robinson to play. But like you said, Ja'Cory Brooks, whatever it is, they're calling it a shoulder injury. It's very suspicious, everything that's going on with him this season. I don't think really anybody has any answers on it yet. We may have an answer on it December 4th when the transfer portal opens, but it's going to be a no-go for Brooks again on Saturday with what is being called a shoulder injury.
I saw on the field last week after the game. He has his arm in a big sling, and one of those things that they'll rest their arm on. So, because Saban at one point he kind of just said he had been banged up, but he'll say that about a bunch of guys. Like he said that about Jason Cleveland this year. Yeah. And but Ja'Cory's arm is actually in some sort of sling.
If you're not following Austin Hannon for, not only all comprehensive football coverage, then you're foolish. But if you need to, if you need to keep up with all the injury news, Austin has you covered as well right there. Follow him on Twitter or X at Austin Hannon _. Make sure you're following BamaCentral because he's putting out all the injury updates and all the breaking news that he finds right there on BamaCentral.com. All right, let's move to last week's kind of weirdness. Okay, last week Alabama beats the brakes off of Chattanooga. Not much to talk about there. You've had 3 weeks in a row, really, of Alabama's offense coming out fast. Obviously took care of business against Kentucky 49-21 and had to come out fast against LSU's offense as well. So you have 3 straight weeks of quick kind of starts for Alabama's offense and really Alabama's defense as well. But daggum, what in the world is Auburn doing? They go on a 3-game win streak. They beat Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Mississippi State. Whoop-de-freaking-do with those 3 teams. But then you bring in New Mexico State. You pay them $1.8 million, and they beat you 31-10. And not only just beat you, like it wasn't a last-second field goal kick, wasn't a Hail Mary. They put up major yards. They beat you from the very start of the game to the end of the game. They scored on the first drive, methodically speaking. They had a veteran quarterback and basically just took what Auburn was going to give them and ended up with a 31-10 game. How does Austin, you already hit it, so I'm going to Katie real quick like this. How does Hugh Freeze have the team bounce? Obviously, it's the Iron Bowl. You don't need to say much. You don't need to sell much. It's Alabama-Auburn. This is a chance you can spoil Alabama's season. But really, I've been in the contention, Katie, that Hugh Freeze has lost his locker room basically because he's poo-pooed on them all year long, saying we need to get better players in here. We need to get better skill position guys. We need to get better guys on offense. And they've basically lost the will to fight and or play for Hugh Freeze. I don't really know how to make of this game. Obviously, like on conventional wisdom says Auburn comes out and fights their tail off and makes it a game. but their season trend says no way. It says that they've already mailed it in. They're going to go to some, Liberty Bowl, Independence Bowl. They're going to go to some low-level tier bowl and call it a season. Katie, what in the world is going on with Auburn after their 31-10 loss to New Mexico State?
Yeah, it's kind of after they lost and just kind of in preparation for this week, I started listening to some Auburn podcasts at the beginning of the week because I haven't followed Hugh Freeze's press conferences all year, so I don't really, nobody's been saying, but they were kind of saying it's been an interesting balance for him because he's been saying apparently all year that it's not the personnel he wants. It's not, they'll get that when he gets in recruits, and he's been doing pretty well so far on the recruiting trail. But it's like, how can you, so he's acknowledging this isn't what he wants, but how do you say that publicly? And then you go back in the locker room and face those guys and they're like, you're not the personnel we want. You're not good enough. So I kind of wasn't super aware of that until the beginning of this week, but I do think the Iron Bowl, it creates its own motivation for Auburn. Even if he has lost them a little bit. Now I do think that especially now, I think the fans will still be super in it because they always are for the Iron Bowl. But I think if Auburn was coming into this game on a 4-game win streak, I think the crowd would be even more rocking because you're having the chance to play for a pretty good bowl game, a pretty good season. I mean, really a great season by their standards. If they finish, I guess that would be 8-4 in year one.
If they'd have won last week, they'd be looking at 8-4, winning against Alabama.
If they won Iron Bowl, yeah. And a win over Alabama, of course, is huge for them. So I think the crowd and the team would have been even more fired up. But I just don't. I don't know what's going on down on the plains. I think this obviously is not the personnel Hugh Freeze wants, and he may last week have kind of been mailing it in and looking ahead to the Iron Bowl this week, and it obviously ended up costing Auburn and giving them a pretty embarrassing loss in year one.
Also, there's no way that Hugh Freeze just skipped all of New Mexico State preparation to go 2 weeks into two weeks of practice on the Iron Bowl. Is there?
Probably not. I tweeted it out more as a joke, but I mean, New Mexico State's got a good football team, and that's not to excuse anything. They're having a great year, and Auburn was a 25.5-point favorite though. And so when I see Auburn fans saying like, oh, like this is not that bad of a loss, like, New Mexico State's a great team and all this, I'm like, well, even with the record you have, you were still favored to win by almost 4 touchdowns. So like you should have won the football game. And you didn't, like you said, you didn't just lose. You got beat bad. You got beat like you were the worst football team. And obviously there's probably a little bit of looking ahead there. I think that Nick Saban does a really good job most of the time of keeping his team kind of under the control of, hey, every game is important. Every game is a stepping stone to what we're trying to get to. And we haven't seen that many times in his career at Alabama where it seemed like Alabama was looking ahead to something else. I think there's been times when they've maybe not been as respectful of their opponent. I obviously think of that Texas A&M game 2 years ago when A&M was not a very good football team and was on their backup quarterback, and Alabama was playing pretty good football in the first 5 games under Bryce Young, and they kind of went in there and fooled around for a while and had to try to put together a miracle comeback that ended up falling. So maybe there was probably a little bit there. I mean, obviously, if you go to Auburn, you're looking forward to playing Alabama at Jordan-Hare Stadium. I mean, that's just a fact. So maybe they weren't as excited for the game, but Hugh Freeze has to do a better job in that situation. It does fall on him, and I think he did a good job of kind of owning up to it after the game, saying he's got to get his team more ready to play football games, and what better opportunity than to try to do it this weekend.
Exactly. So we're going to look forward by looking back. All right, we've already outlined, or I've already said that I think Auburn's intermediate to deep passing game is pretty terrible, awful. They obviously they bring in Peyton Thorne from the transfer portal out of Michigan State. Everybody remembers the Hoover High School quarterback Robbie Ashford is still there playing the 1A, 1B, some sort of a quarterback carousel all year long between Ashford and Peyton Thorne. And so, Austin, I'm going back to you, and then we'll get Katie's thoughts on it. So we'll do back to back here. Last year in the game, they didn't have a quarterback. They played Robbie Ashford, and everybody, I mean, what was it, 42-21, I think it was the final score. But you won 49. Yeah, so you won big. But a lot of people left Bryant-Denny Stadium crying and complaining. Well, they rushed for 300 yards. Auburn rushed for 300 yards. And I thought to myself, why does that even matter with the final score, with the outcome that it was? I mean, literally, that's their only opportunity. They can't throw the ball anyways. And I think you're going to see sort of that same sort of game play out here on Saturday in Jordan-Hare. You can't throw the football. You've got a lot of quarterback run, a lot of Robbie Ashford, a lot of Peyton Thorne, a lot of Jarquez Hunter as well. So they're going to put up a lot of rushing yards. What's the incentive for Alabama? Like last year, I felt like, and here's I guess the question. Last year, I felt like Alabama was kind of conceding. All right, you want to run for 3 yards, you want to run for 4 yards, you want a quarterback scramble for a couple times. That's fine. Conceding, kind of giving up some in the run game to make sure that you can't pass. We're going to make sure you can't pass, and we're just going to basically choke you out. Do you think that we'll see that same sort of strategy on Saturday?
I think it's going to be a different kind of game. Last year, everything on defense, they had so much talent, so many talented players. And you look at the NFL now, and you see what Will Anderson's doing this year. And Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell were both on that roster. Brian Branch was on that roster. Kool-Aid and Terry on all these guys played for that team. And that defense just never really put it together last year. And that includes the Iron Bowl. Auburn, like you said, they kind of had their way on the ground, and if they had been able to stop Bryce Young a few times, they could have made that a football game. And so last year, it just felt like Alabama, everything revolved around the offense and Bryce Young's heroics. And it just seemed like there was just some kind of comfort level that even if we don't get a stop here, Bryce Young will save us. He'll score 6 touchdowns and we'll win. And I think this year the team has a more complete mindset to it where it's complementary football. It's both sides knowing that what their end of the bargain is. And all year we've seen the defense play drastically better than they did last year against Auburn and other games last year. So I think Auburn is good at running the football. I think that they'll have some success. I would be very shocked if they run for 300 yards again, just with what we've seen from this Alabama team. Kentucky was a team that likes to run the ball, and their offense couldn't really do a whole lot of anything a couple weeks ago. So I think we're going to see something more similar to that, where it's going to be more on Alabama's offense to win the game than the defense. I think the defense will hold its own and probably keep Auburn at a pretty low total in both yards and points. And it's going to be on the shoulders of Jalen Milroe, the offensive line, and everybody else on the offense to kind of put up enough points, which I think they will, to win the football game.
Katie, how do you see the defense defending Hugh Freeze in this offense?
Yeah, I would agree with Austin that I think even though last year's Alabama defense was super talented, I think this one overall is better. That they're not going to give up 300 yards rushing. Auburn, you've already said this, they really cannot pass the ball. One of my dad's favorite stats he's been saying the last couple weeks, I think over the last 2 seasons, Auburn's thrown for over 100 yards passing in Power 5 games 3 times. 100 yards, not 200, not some huge, 100 yards passing. And which, that's not the Hugh Freeze we know or remember from when he was at Ole Miss, is you can barely even pass for 100 yards. Which Peyton Thorne, during Auburn's little win streak against, the worst teams in the SEC, he did look a little bit better. But Alabama's defensive backfield is a lot better than Mississippi State, Vanderbilt's, and Arkansas's, and is, obviously one of the best in the country. And so I think it's going to be tough sledding for Auburn on offense. But, it was 2 years ago, too. The problem was, somehow Alabama's offense just, I don't know, forgot how to play. Mm-hmm. So, but I will say, talking about last year's, really Alabama football the last 2 years was kind of like a mystery each week, which it was so unusual for Saban coach teams, but the LSU game last year, Alabama didn't score a touchdown to the fourth quarter. The Iron Bowl 2 years ago, Alabama didn't score a touchdown to the fourth quarter. I feel like this year's Alabama team, even though there's been times this year where they've been a tale of 2 halves, I feel like we know more what we're going to get from the offense and defense. And like you talked about, Joe, the last couple of weeks, they finally started coming out strong at the beginning of games. And so this defense has probably given up more points than, the early 2010s defenses would. But I think they're more consistent. And I think this Auburn offense is just not good, that I think it's going to be difficult for Auburn to move the ball and score a lot.
All right, before we move on to our picks, and we are going to move on to our picks here in just a moment, right here on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. This is a Football Friday with Austin Hannon, Katie Wyndham, and myself, Joe Gaither. My man Austin Hannon wrote about the Alabama-Auburn rivalry and the voodoo that's in Jordan-Hare Stadium, or supposed voodoo that's in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Coach Saban talking about it this week, saying, well, if you believe it to be true, then therefore it will be true. If you believe it won't be true, then then it won't be true. Basically, the self-fulfilling prophecy was his kind of attitude on the voodoo at Jordan-Hare. But Austin, you did a little deep dive, and I want to encourage everybody to go out to BamaCentral.com and read Austin's piece that he wrote this morning about the voodoo, the challenges that are in Jordan-Hare. All right, so it's not 100,000 people, Austin, but what makes Jordan-Hare a top 2, top 3 most difficult place to play in the SEC? And really, how can Alabama overcome it tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, they have really good fans, and Alabama people watching this, and obviously Bryant-Denny Stadium's had its moments this year, and I applaud the fans for that. Texas, LSU, and Tennessee were all good environments, as they should be. But it just seems like Auburn fans are always like it's people want to call it the complacency of fans and all that, and how Bryant-Denny used to be like that. It used to be loud, and now that they've won all these championships, it's not anymore. I don't know what it is, and that's why everything I've said this week about how I think this is probably going to go, there's always an asterisk by it, because when Alabama goes there, you just don't really know what's going to happen, because and it's not always Alabama's fault. Like, it could be a case of a 6-5 Auburn team playing like a 9-win Auburn team. It could be Alabama missing field goals, throwing interceptions, doing things that they haven't done all season, pass interference one after, like things like that it just seems like everything just seems to go awry. And the only game that I can really remember is 2011, when a team went in there and took care of business when they were supposed to. And I think that this year there's a chance for that to happen again, just because, like I said earlier, based off what we're seeing with the trends of both schools and the way that Milroe's playing and what Auburn and Alabama's strengths are compared to the weaknesses of each team. And it all stacks up like an Alabama big win. But then you look at the Vegas spread, it keeps moving around all week, going from 10.5 up to 15. Now it's back to 13.5. So there's obviously still a lot of divide on what people think is going to happen. Obviously, the people that are putting money on Alabama are saying what I'm saying, and saying there's just no way that this is a close game. But then the people putting their money on Auburn are saying, yeah, but haven't you watched the last 6-7 times Alabama's been down there? What's happened? It just, something goes wrong, something goes right for Auburn, and then next thing you know, it's a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. So I'm going to keep on saying what I've been saying all week. I think it is going to get probably pretty ugly at Jordan-Hare Stadium on Saturday. But once again, that's going to have an asterisk by it, because I've seen crazy things, and you can't ever really count Auburn out at home in the Iron Bowl. So I think the trend, we might see more of not maybe a 42-14 win like 2011, but something more in that vicinity than a 4 overtime win.
You're muted.
There we go. So, sorry about that. One more take from you before we move to our picks. Then, what is something that you're looking forward to, or some angle to the Iron Bowl that we haven't covered on Bama Central or on the show already today?
Well,
we have lemonade. We have some Tumors Corner lemonade. I've never been down there to have the lemonade. I've only been down there for a basketball game. So every time I ask that, is the lemonade all that it's cracked up to be?
I think I've only had it once. I unfortunately have spent a lot of time in Auburn because I grew up in Montgomery. So my sister went there. My grandparents lived there. I've been many times for Iron Bowls, basketball games, camps, whatever. But I think I've only had Tumors lemonade once. And I think it was just fine. Like,
lemonade's lemonade, right?
Yeah. Lemon, sugar, water. But so are you talking about game angle or non-game angle? Sorry.
Anything you like. I just want to give you the floor before I move to the picks. Whatever you like.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about this in just a minute, but I think it's going to be important. This is really Alabama's first loud road environment since Texas A&M. And, Alabama had a lot of pre-snap penalties in that game. So how well is the offensive line, the offense as a whole? Because it wasn't just the line. It was, some of the tight ends. It goes to, how loud is Jalen being? Is he snapping on time? Whatever. How is Alabama going to handle the noise? Because, next week in Atlanta, it'll – it's 50-50, but it'll probably be a little more Georgia. And in a dome stadium, it gets super loud. And so just the games coming up, how well is Alabama going to handle the noise this weekend at Jordan-Hare in a game where you're better than the opponent, your talent level probably even according to Hugh Freeze, is significantly better, where you should win this game, where you're favored by 2 scores, where you weren't at A&M. Are they how are they gonna handle the noise in an environment like this?
All right, so let's go ahead and kind of wrap up the analysis, and let's move into our picks. This is Football Friday on BamaCentral.com, and we hope you guys are having a great Thanksgiving weekend. It's going to be Iron Bowl weekend. Bama Central will be there 2:30 in Jordan-Hare Stadium. You guys can follow us at BamaCentral.com for all the game coverage. Let's hit real quick on thoughts last night on the Egg Bowl. We'll make picks for the SEC games, and then we will pick the 2 out-of-conference kind of games that have national implications as well. So last night, Katie Windham, the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss wins 17-7, and Will Rogers goes into the transfer portal. Have you ever seen a coach ride out onto the field with an ATV? And any other thoughts on the Egg Bowl?
I have not that I can recall. That was certainly something. There's not a lot of thoughts on that game. It was pretty bad. It was a pretty bad Egg Bowl.
It was an ugly game. It was an ugly game.
I wasn't locked in the whole time. We switched over to the NFL a little bit just because it was nothing super exciting going on. Ole Miss kind of seemed like they were derping around for a little bit. But then Lane was super pumped after the game. If you check out social media, he was loving that Egg Bowl victory, but he wasn't necessarily acting like it during the first half that he was super invested in it. But it's good, I guess, for Alabama's resume. The Ole Miss finishes as a 10-win team. Will probably finish in the top 10, even though, we don't really know if that'll matter depending on what else happens around the country. And obviously Alabama has to win these next 2 games.
Yeah, it's kind of what I expected. It just kind of screamed a little bit of a gross football game coming in because that was really the only way Mississippi State was going to win it, right? I mean, they weren't going to come out there and outscore Ole Miss and beat them like that. So they tried to make it dirty, and they did, and it still didn't work out for them. They just haven't been able to put any points on the board all year. Will Rogers, I kind of feel bad for him just because it seems like after the last 2 years, he's had such a great 2 seasons with Mike Leach as the coach and, the passing offense, and he was setting records. And This year, he just didn't really have a very fun last season in Starkville, which now, as Joe said, he's going to be moving on somewhere else. We'll see where that may be. A lot of people think he might stay in the SEC. So good for him to get out of there, I guess. I think he's had a great career, and Nick Saban even said so himself multiple times the week of that game that, he's a player that they respect a lot, and they recruited to go to Tuscaloosa when he was in high school. So, Mississippi State, not very good football team. Ole Miss found a way. I think they knew it was going to be pretty gross. They just had to find a way to get over the obstacle of it being your arch rival and the emotions and everything like that and being on the road. And it was a good environment there for most of the game, and Ole Miss found a way. And Lane Kiffin, not a lot of people talk about the job he's done at Ole Miss. You think about when he got there, the situation they were in after Matt Luke left and all the violations they had. And, Alabama had just beaten them back-to-back times by like 60 points, and it felt like they were miles away. And then he stepped in there and immediately, flipped the entire situation around, and now has 2 10-win seasons, and they'll be going for an 11th win in a bowl game. So good for Lane Kiffin. I always enjoy seeing him after that. He broke a headset, I think, at the end of the game too. So pretty fired up to get the Egg Bowl thing. The only question I have, Joe, is did you guys notice the Egg Bowl was silver this year? Is there? I didn't know it. I was kind of confused about that because usually it's gold.
I did not notice that.
Did they bury the old Egg Bowl with Coach Leach?
I don't know.
Had to make a new one for this year? I don't know either. I didn't notice that. Tomorrow.
I think this picture, like Lane posted, it looks gold.
Does it?
This is gold.
On TV, it looked silver.
Maybe the one they held up after the game wasn't like the real one,
Okay.
Because they had to get it back from Mississippi State, but I don't know. I don't know the logistics of the Egg Bowl trophy.
Tomorrow on Saturday, 11 a.m. 11 a.m. All my times are in Eastern time. It's throwing me off. 11 a.m. Kentucky is going to Louisville. Maybe Will Rogers' new school. Louisville, a 7.5-point favorite. Can Big Blue Nation get their season back on track, Austin?
4 straight wins in this rivalry for Kentucky. I think that comes to an end on Saturday. They have been awful since that Georgia game when they came in undefeated. Me and Katie got to see them in Lexington a couple of weeks ago. Just not a good football team right now. It's in Louisville. Louisville still got a lot to play for. Let's not forget they're a 1-loss team, and they're going to be playing for an ACC championship next week with an outside long shot at the college football playoff if they were able to win that game. Probably not going to happen, but they still have that hope there. So I think they do flip that streak and they get the first win against Kentucky in 5 years.
Yeah, I'm going to go Louisville as well, basically for all the things he said. Kentucky hasn't looked good. Louisville still has a lot to play for. It's in Louisville, so I'm going to go with the Cards.
You just don't gain anything by telling your roster we need to get better players in here, and that's what Mark Stoops did after the Georgia game, and everything has gone off the rails since then. They're going to lose again tomorrow. Texas A&M is at LSU, also at 11 a.m. This one is on ESPN. Katie Wyndham, the LSU Tigers are an 11.5-point favorite.
LSU, especially because it's in Baton Rouge. And I think we have seen a little bit that these teams playing with their interim coaches maybe have a little bit of motivation, but I think LSU doesn't have a lot to play for maybe season-wise. I guess I haven't really looked at the possibilities, but I guess probably not a chance to New Year's Six because I guess of Ole Miss, but to play for Better Bowl, but also think Jaden Daniels maybe trying to this is his last chance to make a statement for the Heisman. So I think he'll have a big game and the LSU will take care of business at home.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting one. Since A&M fired Jimbo, I've kind of went back and watched some of their game film, and they just look kind of more, I don't know, like motivated. And you see this a lot of times with interim coaches and stuff. It's an 11 a.m. kick at Tiger Stadium, which is different from it being a night game. I think LSU wins the game, but I think this is another situation where Jaden Daniels has to go against probably the best, if not second best, debate it all you want with Alabama, defense in the defense he's played this season. He struggled a little bit against Florida State. He struggled a little bit against Alabama. And if I think A&M can cover that big spread, keep this kind of a one-score game late, I think LSU wins it close.
Ooh, I like it, but I'm going to go LSU and the number and the 11.5. So we keep going. We got Vanderbilt is at Tennessee. Is there any reason to talk about this, Austin?
No. Blowout. Vandy seems to have gotten worse as the season's gone on. Tennessee also has done the same thing, but this is a big spot for them. You can't lose to your rival. And if they lost to Vanderbilt, things would really be falling out of the sky. So they'll take care of business. They'll make themselves look a little bit better by putting up some style points on Vandy and get ready for their bowl game. Yeah,
another brutal season for the Doors. It's just brutal in Nashville. Tennessee, big.
They got off they won their first 2 games, and then it's been
nine straight losses.
9 straight. Not good. Okay, we'll keep going here. Another ACC-SEC collision. Number 5, Florida State goes to the Swamp, goes to Florida. Florida State is a 6.5-point road favorite, Katie. No Jordan Travis now.
Yeah, but isn't Florida also without their quarterback?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I would have more confidence in Florida if they had not lost to Arkansas at home. The thing is now, especially with them losing at Missouri, I mean, Florida's fighting for bowl eligibility, which is a wild statement, one you don't hear a lot, I feel like. Even without Jordan Travis, I feel like Florida State obviously still has so much on the line, so much that they're playing for. So I'm going to go with the Noles.
Yeah, this one's interesting. And so is the other ACC-SEC matchup you're going to ask me about. See, it's in the Swamp where Florida's 5-1 this year. They just are a completely different team offensively and defensively at home. Florida State doesn't have their quarterback. I'm gonna go upset. I'm going Gators. I think this is gonna help Alabama a lot. Obviously, I think Billy Napier finds a way to get the Gators to a bowl game. I think this is the big win that they've been looking for a few weeks now, and they finished the home slate 6-1 this year, and they get a huge rivalry win to go to a bowl game.
Austin, do you think that Nick Saban took half of his analyst staff and said, hey, I need y'all to watch Florida State this week. Billy needs some help. We need to help Billy. Billy needs to go and help us. And he took half the staff to break down Florida State so that Billy Napier can get a leg up and they can win.
Yeah, maybe. And, I mean, obviously Florida's going to need the help it can get. Florida State's got a better roster all around. But I think a kid making his first career start in the Swamp at night is just not a very good equation. And I think that Jordan Travis injury is going to hurt them a lot more than maybe people think this weekend. And I think Florida gets it done.
I'm going to go with you as well. And maybe it's just my gummed glasses hopeful that Florida gives Alabama a little bit of help. But the circumstances are there so that it doesn't sound too crazy. I think Florida will win. And like you said, Austin, Florida, a much different team at home than they are on the road. It's Jekyll and Hyde. They're completely different at home than they are on the road. We're going to go 2 more SEC, ACC games before the Iron Bowl. Georgia is on the road in Atlanta, going 45 minutes away to play Georgia Tech. The Dogs a 24-point favorite. Georgia Tech having a better year, but there's no chance they pull the upset, is there?
No. This has been a rivalry dominated, but Georgia Tech's a little better this year. They've gotten some better wins this year. They're not as bad as they've been in years past, but no, they're not going to beat Georgia.
So this wasn't the ACC SEC other matchup you had.
No.
We want to talk about South Carolina.
You're thinking of the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Georgia easily, even though it's on the road. But I'm sure the stadium will probably be over 50% Georgia fans. So Georgia.
Yeah, Atlanta not too tough for Georgia fans to get to. Okay, last one with so let's see, Clemson, number 24, Clemson going to South Carolina. The Fighting Dabo Sweeney's a 7.5-point favorite. Katie Wyndham, which corny coach do you like better?
This is a tough one because South Carolina's fighting for bowl eligibility. They play well at home. They finally snapped the streak last year against Clemson, because Clemson had kind of dominated this series for a little while. But Clemson's been playing better as of late. I think I'm going to go with the Gamecocks at home.
Sandstorm.
6-6.
Yeah, they're playing a lot better, Joe. And they were 2-6, and I kind of looked at their schedule and said there's still a way that they can get bowl eligible. I believe that they can do it. They had I think they're one of the first teams in FBS to have 4 straight home games to end the year in a long time, and they've won all 3 of them so far, including that kind of gross game last week. But they beat Kentucky at home. It's going to be loud. It's a pretty underrated rivalry, I think, in college football. Those 2 fan bases do not like each other at all. They call it the Palmetto Bowl. It's another night game for South Carolina. I think they're going to get it done. They beat them last year to kind of ruin their playoff hopes. Obviously, Clemson remembers that and is the favorite, and they're probably thinking about that loss last year. And I wouldn't be surprised at all. Obviously, I'm more just going out on a limb, hoping that another SEC team can get bowl eligible here. So I think Spencer Rattler plays well in his final home game, which he's done so well the last few years at Williams-Brice, and I think they get it done again this year.
Austin, let me surprise you. I'm going to make it 3 for 3. 3 South Carolina picks on the Joe Gaither Show, even though it might be the first time all year I picked South Carolina. I don't know. I just got a feeling a lot of things you talk about playing well lately, the night game aspect, the fighting for bowl eligibility. I think that this is the one where Shane Beamer can hang his hat on all offseason long. We'll see. We got Clemson twice in a row, so that will help heal his broken foot and help heal the boosters' broken hearts, I guess, for the poor season. Yo, let's go talk about the game. 11 a.m. tomorrow, number 2, Ohio State against number 3, Michigan. The Wolverines stealing signs are a 3.5-point home favorite. Austin Hannon, which side are you going with, maize and blue or scarlet and gray?
Let's just do another upset. I mean, we're riding with the upsets this show. I really do respect Ohio State this year. I think that they've had a couple good wins. They seem a lot tougher this year. They seem a lot more like they're able to win like the hard-fought, physical football games than they have been in years past. And J.J. McCarthy, we need to get a little bit of a fraud watch on him. Ever since Jim Harbaugh left, it seems like he's completely forgotten how to run the offense. And I think that the coaching advantage is a big deal. People obviously don't want to talk about it and they don't think it's that big of a deal. But Ryan Day being with his team and motivating his guys and Jim Harbaugh not being able to be there, I think is a bigger factor than people think. And that's based off of what I said about J.J. McCarthy, who has been not good since Jim Harbaugh left the sideline. It is in Ann Arbor. It's going to be cold. It's going to be one of those physical games that comes down to the end. But I think Ohio State squeaks it out this year.
OH, Katie Wyndham.
I don't know. I really haven't watched either of these teams a ton this year. I really don't know if I've watched Ohio State since the end of that Notre Dame game earlier in the season when the Fighting Irish just completely blew it at the end. And it's kind of wild to look at the playoff scenario we're in now and think if Notre Dame held on like they should have in that game. Michigan hasn't played well without Jim Harbaugh, but I also feel like they've been super galvanized by this whole thing. And because it's at home, I'll go with Michigan.
I'm going to go with the Buckeyes. A lot of what Austin was saying. I think that, look, I do have a little bit of I believe in the sign stealing credence. And I think that since it's been cut off, maybe Ohio State's going to be able to play and win on a more fair setting I think it's going to be, look, Alabama fans are going to have to watch that game, 11 a.m., get warmed up and watch it. Watch Ohio State and Michigan hopefully beat the brains out of each other before the Iron Bowl. All right, last game before the Iron Bowl, Katie, we're going to talk about a game that happens tonight. Oregon State and Oregon, Friday night. We're going to go ahead and put out the episode Friday night at 7:30 Central Time on Fox. The Oregon Ducks are a 14-point favorite. Can you get any help from DJ Uiagalelei?
I don't think so. Not. The game's in Eugene, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, since they couldn't beat Washington at home, which I think the weather played a big factor in that game. It kind of caused the safety, and I feel like it kind of flipped the momentum. But Bo Nix, Oregon, we said this a lot on the show, but they have a lot to play for. They have a lot on the line. He has Heisman hopes. They obviously have playoff hopes. If they lose this game, their playoff hopes are over. So I'm going to go with the Ducks.
Yeah, if this game was in Corvallis, I think it'd be a lot more of a debate. But with it being in Eugene, obviously both teams have a lot to play for. Like Katie said, Oregon's still thinking right now. I mean, based off the college football rankings we've seen week after week, they're thinking they're winning in. You know, you win the rest of your games, you win the Pac-12 championship over Washington, you're in the playoff. For Oregon State, it's the arch rival. Our arch rivals leaving the conference. And this is kind of their last chance to get a crack at them. But like I said, I think being in Eugene and with Oregon, you know, they've got still so much to play for. And the way Bo Nix is playing, Oregon should be able to win this one.
I'll make it 3 for 3 and take the Ducks as well. But it'll be something for everyone to watch as they're having their turkey sandwiches this evening. All right, number 17, Alabama takes on Ohio State. Emerald Coast Classic. Can't get an episode out without peeking at Alabama basketball. Crimson Tide taking on the Buckeyes in basketball. Austin, we're going to keep it rolling. The Crimson Tide going 5-0.
I'm actually in Destin right now, so I think I'm about 20 minutes away from where the gym is. But
are you going?
I'm leaving for Auburn here in a couple hours, so I won't be staying tonight to stay for the basketball game. But we'll see. It's kind of the first big test, right? I mean, they've played a bunch of cupcakes so far, and Ohio State's not, a ranked team. They're not a great team, but they're a team that should be able to challenge Alabama with the talent and physicality that they have in size, and that's something that Alabama hasn't had thrown at it this year, other than in the scrimmages when they lost both of them. But that was without Mark Sears. I think Alabama keeps it rolling. I think they get the win. I'll trust Vegas on this one. I don't really know too much about Ohio State yet, but I have liked what I've seen from the Alabama offense, and I think they'll probably score enough points to win tonight.
6.5-point favorites. Katie, does Alabama break the 100-point mark again?
I don't know if they'll do that, even though who knows, Nate may be a little mad after the last game, but I do think they'll win. This weekend is huge for them. You look at the December schedule and it's brutal, even though Creighton got blown out. I can't remember now by who yesterday.
Colorado State. Yeah.
So maybe it makes it look a little more manageable, even though that game is away. So maybe not. But the December schedule is brutal non-conference wise. So I think Alabama needs to go 2-0 this weekend, which holiday tournaments have traditionally not been great for the Crimson Tide, no matter who's the coach.
Right.
I think they do get this done. I think it's good for this team to kind of face a test of a better team for the first time this weekend. It's going to be good for them to figure some things out.
All right, my glasses are about 10 inches thick, and I'm taking Alabama in a big win tonight over Ohio State. But that is not what we are here for on a Football Friday. We're here for the Iron Bowl tomorrow, 2:30 in Jordan-Hare Stadium. BamaCentral will be all over it. Austin Hannon and Katie Wyndham will be there in person, as well as you're going to have Matthew Gibson, or you're going to have Edwin Stanton, you're going to have Blake Byler. Who else are you going to have up in the booth? Will Miller, maybe? Going to have a lot of crews, a lot of the BamaCentral crew up there. So make sure you follow BamaCentral at BamaCentral on the X Machine, at Alabama Crimson Tide on Sports Illustrated, on Facebook, at BamaCentral.com on your regular web browser, and at BamaCentral SI on Instagram for all the coverage. Alabama, a 14-point favorite against the Auburn Tigers. Austin has already outlined how the line has moved up and down and up and down. We're going to play it at 14 just for the sake of settling it somewhere. 14 is where we're going to play it. The Crimson Tide looking to get win number 9 in a row, 10 in a row, and then 10. Get to the SEC championship game. Can they avoid the stumbling block? Katie Wyndham, your final thoughts on the game and the pick.
Look, 2 years ago, in the week leading up to the Iron Bowl, Saban acknowledged that Jordan-Hare is a tough place to play. The Alabama's had issues there. So I thought, Alabama's going to easily take care of business, and they obviously didn't. But this week, though, Saban has seemed to be in a really good mood, and the players were too. They seemed really relaxed. I think they know that this Auburn team is not good, and I don't think that means that they're overlooking them. I think this Alabama team has been focused the last couple of weeks. I think they know what they need to do. I'm maybe not predicting as big of a win like 2011, but that was kind of a time they needed to make a last impression on the voters and the polls to kind of get stay up in the BCS rankings. And so Alabama needs all the help they can get right now, and they need to control what they can control, and that's putting on a good performance to Auburn. So I do think Alabama plays well this weekend, and I think they cover the spread and win in Jordan-Hare.
Yeah, I've already kind of hinted at all show here. Alabama's, like you said, they won 9 in a row. They're playing their best football. They've covered in 6 of their last 7 games. That's 4 in a row too. So they've been. I mean, if you've been betting on Alabama, you've been winning a lot recently, and I just think that continues. I think that there's never going to be an overlooking of the Iron Bowl, and I think that's really Auburn's only hope in this game. That, and if Alabama decides that they want to turn the ball over 2 or 3 times and miss a couple field goals and give up a couple big plays on defense, then you open yourself up to maybe getting upset. But we just haven't seen that from either team. We haven't seen Auburn really do that on offense. We haven't really seen Alabama mess up too much recently. It's really since that loss, like in terms of turning the ball over and allowing sacks and having mental errors and allowing big plays, like all that's kind of fixed itself throughout the season. So I don't think there's any reason to believe that either of those trends for either school is going to go back this week. Like I said, always an asterisk by that. There, on a Saturday afternoon in late November at Jordan-Hare Stadium, anything you think about either team can always change. But I'm going to ride with what I'm confident in, and that's Alabama and not Auburn. I think that they're going to easily cover this number. I think 14.5 is really just people kind of thinking that this game's been close in the past, and kind of giving Auburn a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I think Alabama covers the number by a good margin and kind of gets to kind of roll away with a win here and move on and play their biggest game of the season next weekend in Atlanta.
I'm going to go make it 3 for 3. Alabama wins and covers. I think I said 49-21 yesterday on the show. I'm going to stick to that, 49-21. I think that Alabama is able to get Auburn into 3rd and long situations and turn them over consistently. And really, I don't think it's going to be much of a ball game. It'll be a lot of fun for Alabama fans to watch just because it's going to be a bloodbath of Auburn tears, but I think it's going to not be the most entertaining rivalry game of the day, which I think Alabama fans will be A-okay with. All right, so let's get out of here for the day. Katie and Austin got to go do some Black Friday shopping. Got to go make sure that they have their fits ready for their time in Jordan-Hare tomorrow. Make sure you follow Austin Hannon at Austin Hannon _, Katie Wyndham at Katie Wyndham _, and BamaCentral at BamaCentral on the X machine. We're going to get out of here for the day. I'm going to tag on a Mississippi State segment for those who are listening and watching on all the other platforms. We're going to be joined by Mississippi State Cowbell Corner correspondent to talk about the Egg Bowl, and that's going to do it for our week. We'll turn it over watching Alabama basketball against Ohio State tonight, Egg Bowl or Iron Bowl tomorrow at 2:30, and then we'll see whoever Alabama, Oregon, or Santa Clara, whoever Alabama plays in basketball, either at 2 or at 6 tomorrow. So we will
3 or 6. Yeah,
we'll be doing both. Yeah, my time zones are off because my computer's all messed up at being on the wrong time zone. Got to get back to God's time zone and watch the Iron Bowl tomorrow morning. So cannot wait. Hope you all have had a great Thanksgiving. Thanks to Katie and Austin taking some time out of their holiday weekend, joining us on a Football Friday. This has been a Football Friday on BamaCentral and Bama